Welcome back to CyberSip. Barry Rabkin is celebrating a 45-year career in the insurance industry, working on the business side of the insurance industry, being a management consultant to the industry, and forming or leading technology-focused insurance strategic advisory practices within the United States and the United Kingdom. He is also, in addition to being one of my favorite thought leaders, I'm very excited to be talking to him today. He is the author of the book From Stone Tablets to Satellites, the continual, intimate, but awkward relationship between the insurance industry and technology. And he joins us now from his office in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Welcome to CyberSip, Barry.
Thank you very much, Kevin. This was a surprise when you reached out to me. I'm thrilled to join you, and I understand this is going to be posted somewhere around Halloween, and I think, given what we're going to discuss, it may very well be a very scary topic. I don't know.
I think it'll be oddly appropriate for Halloween, or as my daughter calls it, spooky season. Well, let's start first with a little bit of background. How did you get started in the insurance industry? And after your detour into service, how did you connect your insurance industry experience to technology and what we call cyber today?
I got into insurance through I'm pretty sure it was a want ad. I'm a native Boston. I'm a native of the Boston area. And I think there was an ad in the Boston Globe. This was way back when, for an ad by John Hancock for summer actuarial students in their life insurance department. And in 1966, I was hired by John Hancock into that summer life insurance actuarial program. Before that, I had jobs I was bagging groceries, working in supermarkets, working in department stores. And so being sort of like a professional for the first time in my life, working for John Hancock, we were all treated very differently. I hadn't ever experienced anything like that. And at the end of the summer, actually, it was an actuarial research program that I was hired into that summer. And we looked at how will life insurance evolve over the next 10 years, and winners, losers, and what will the industry look like. And it was extremely interesting. At the end of the summer, we were all told, if you want to look for other jobs after you graduate, because they knew we were juniors, and we had just finished our junior year, and we were going into our senior year. If we wanted to look for other jobs, fine. But Hancock said, come on back. You don't have to interview. You don't have to re-interview with us. Just come on back. Right. And it was a great experience. And I loved being in the Back Bay of Boston. I loved working for John Hancock. Mm-hmm. And so I just went back. I went back in 1967. And that really was the start of my insurance career. I knew the Vietnam War was going on. I knew that what I was doing at Hancock was not going to make a bit of difference to Uncle Sam, and it didn't. And that's when I went into the Army. But to put it in big blocks, and then I'll get back to your question about cyber. All in all, about 17 years in the insurance industry, actually working in the insurance industry, most of it on the business side. I did have about 4 years in technology when I worked for Aetna Life and Casualty, as I put it, back when they could afford the ampersand, when Aetna sold absolutely everything. I worked in a division called Safari, System by Aetna for Fast Access to Records and Information. Safari, the director even had a pith helmet on his file cabinet. And the whole concept of Safari at the time was, and I'm using the words correctly, it was a real-time underwriting system. So when an input operator filled out the application, the deck page came printing out within 3 seconds. It was a real-time system. It was written up twice by National Geographic. It was written up by Best Review, and Aetna had modeled it after Sabre. The Sabre system, the reservation system. Eventually, Safari became, as I put it, the amoeba that ate Chicago, because we put more lines on it, we put commissions on it, it's a wonder. I always thought it was why did we not dim the lights of Hartford? I mean, it just became so large, and back then we didn't have the architectures that we do today.
Yeah.
Any rate, 17 years in the insurance industry, most on the business side. 8 years as a management consultant to the insurance industry, and since 1997, I've been an insurance industry analyst. So it adds up to about 50 years now. The only byways, if you will, graduate school after the Army, graduate school, and then I had a chance to work for IBM Global Services as a management consultant. And I had a chance to work for Arthur D. Little. And it was just, and I also had a chance to work for Bell Labs. Bell
Oh my
Labs was
goodness.
that
Yeah.
right after the Army. So
Mhm.
I've always had a mixture of technology and something. And for most of my life, that something is insurance industry, insurance commerce, and how does the insurance industry take care of clients using current and emerging technologies. As I've told some folks, when we talk about cyber, I don't know if it's a curse or a blessing. As an analyst, I've been surrounded by information technology people and telecommunications people. And I can see how this is all going to come about. And people ask about cyber, and they ask about what are cyber risks, and I think that's not the right question. It's a good question, but it's not the right question. To me, I see us moving into the cyber age. We are actually moving into a discontinuous shift, a step up, a step through. We are moving into something from which we had presently been into something we have not been. We are moving into the cyber age. And that cyber age is the result of the confluence of 5 technologies and their applications. And those are digitization. We are taking data from wherever it was, whatever prisons it was held in, whether it's documents, whether it's x-rays, whether it's voicemails, whatever. We are setting data free. Digitization. Mobility. Mobility is another one of those technologies. A third one is the internet, or the web, as I generally call it. But the web is nothing more than a graphic user interface of the internet. We have digitization, we have mobility, we have the internet, cloud technologies and their applications, and of course, artificial intelligence technologies and their applications. So it's those 5 technologies and some of the select applications, and they are building the cyber age. They are reinforcing, they are reshaping us into the cyber age. And I have visions of the Matrix. I have visions of all these scientific or science fiction movies that, well, this couldn't possibly happen. But that's where we are. I mean, we already talk about, well, we're an interconnected society, or more and more things are being interconnected, or we have home appliances, or we have this or that, and it's all
Internet
being
of
connected to
Things.
the web.
Yeah. Mhm.
But it's more than that. It's the confluence of those 5 technologies and their applications that are pushing us into the cyber age. It's not. I even got a pushback from my editor, who, when I told him of my idea for writing this book, he said, "Well, this is just really another risk." And I went, "No, it's not. It's not another risk. It's silent. It's stealthy. It's
Right.
random. And worst of all, it's evolving, because this cyber age is really going to create a world that is more like a complex adaptive system, that is more like an ecosystem, and companies and their various applications that the companies use to conduct commerce and to interact and to communicate, it's going to behave more like an ecosystem. And to me, that means that the risks are going to evolve. And before I forget, the cyber risks, whatever they are and however we're going to discuss them, are not replacing the traditional risks. The traditional risks are still there.
They'll still be there, of course.
So whether you're talking about reinsurance companies, whether you're talking about cyber loss modelers, whether you're talking about risk managers, they have CISOs, CROs, whatever, they have an expanding set of risks to be concerned about. But let's get back to the cyber risks.
Yeah.
They're
So
evolving.
I think this is a good point to jump in. And let me ask you this, Barry. I think one of the reasons, the chief reason I've been so interested in talking to you for a long time is the notion that I'm not sure if you're the contrarian or if everyone else is the contrarian, but you have made great waves asserting and supporting the notion that cyber risks are uninsurable. So before we get to that, I want to set the table a little bit. You've been talking about these technologies and the evolution of the cyber age. Maybe we should talk for a moment about what is a cyber risk and how does it differ from what we might loosely call the traditional risks like auto and home and property, because
I
I
don't
think
think
that
you can,
sets the table.
I don't think you can compare cyber risks to these other risks. I
Right.
don't think you can compare cyber risks even to hurricanes or tsunamis or any other severe storms. It's, you're right. I've taken this stand, and let me back up a little bit again.
Sure.
I think when cyber risk management started about 3 decades ago,
Hmm.
the risks were relatively simple, but they are evolving and they will continue to evolve. And excuse the phrasing, thank God for CrowdStrike. Because up until the CrowdStrike incident, I was just, this outlier in Santa Fe who's been shouting that this is the cyber risks are not insurable. Now, what do I mean by uninsurable? I mean,
Hmm.
as a broker told me about a year plus ago, anything's insurable. You can go out and play in traffic. God bless. Of course, anything,
Meaning
anything
you
is
can meaning
insurable.
you can sell insurance for almost anything.
That's
Right.
right. What I don't say enough, and what I will say in the book that I'm writing, is that I am talking about underwriting profit. That I'm talking about insurers should only write coverage that generates underwriting profit. That is to say, only underwrites to combined ratio of under 100%. Now, right now, the cyber risks are generating profit. I mean, the loss ratios are what, 30%, 40%, somewhere in that range. You'd really have to work at making that unprofitable. It's
Hmm.
back when I was a kid in the insurance industry, you had to work at making homeowners unprofitable. You really
Right.
had to work at selling homeowners insurance and not making a profit out of it. Now, of
Hmm.
course, those days have
Those
long
days
since
are gone.
changed.
Yes.
So yes, cyber right now under underwriting cyber is profitable right now, but I think they're going to evolve. They're going to evolve to there's going to be more crowd strikes. There's going to be more systemic risk. In fact, I would argue that every cyber risk attack is a systemic risk attack because to me, it's affecting more than one person. It's affecting more than one division. If if
Even
I
on a
and I
single company, you're saying even
Yes,
if
even
a
on
yes,
because how many people are affected in that single company?
could be hundreds, could be thousands.
Then to
There
me,
could be
that's systemic.
customers, consumers. Yes,
Right.
I see what you mean.
Exactly. The supply chain, the ecosystem, that attacking that one function could ripple through that ecosystem and affect not only the firms in that ecosystem, but the employees of the firms in that ecosystem. And we haven't, and I know it's still early, but we haven't even discussed OT related enterprises. About a year plus ago, someone from Houston called me up, and now your bell should be ringing. And he said, "So, what are insurance companies doing about insuring oil and gas and energy firms?" And I was thinking, I had been, it's a great question, but I've been thinking about IT. My whole life has been insurance and looking
Hmm.
at IT related risks. And he had a great point. And I talked to a couple of folks that I knew, and they went, "Well, we're really not doing much. We're not specializing between the risk to information technology enabled firms and OT enabled firms." And by the way, OT enabled firms is more than just gas and water and utilities. It's also hospitals. Hospitals are a hybrid of the IT and the admin
Hmm.
part and the billing part and whatever else. Plus, the OT part, those machines that keep people alive, or the surgeons or the physicians use during the various procedures. I always love that, procedures. Surgery? No, procedures. Oh, okay,
It's a
whatever you want to
procedure.
call it.
Well, it
You're
reminds me
still
of
knocking me out before you do anything.
there's a movie,
So
When Harry Met Sally, where Billy Crystal says he's talking about, oh no, it's actually a different movie. Kyla, we'll have to put it on the screen it's the movie where he goes cattle raising and city slickers. And he says, when you're 40 or something like that, you'll have your first surgical operation. You'll call it a procedure.
that's right.
As though yes. So, well, let me
That's
ask
right.
you then, why,
So what
drawing
one
the
of the
analogy,
one of the head underwriters told me is that
yeah,
one of their problems is that they don't have enough. This is interesting to me because of all the MGAs. They don't have enough brokers who are selling cyber, and they also don't have the resources to train the brokers in the differences between what an energy firm needs versus what, let's just say, what a bank needs.
hmm
And if you follow some of the folks on LinkedIn and other places on the OT risks, on the energy risks, is that they really do have something to worry about, because not only is it a loss of information, but it could be a loss of life. I mean,
yes, sure,
those operations, to use that word again, for energy or
hmm
oil and gas, I mean, that's heavy equipment. That could put people in harm's way. And so something that a cyber attacker on that not only can stop the production of the whatever, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, whether it's water, but it could also harm the people who are operating that machinery. I'm going to get back to what a cyber risk is. And I like Jen Easterly's definition from
oh,
CISA.
had the
Uh,
pleasure of hearing her speak a few years back. She's terrific.
she seems like she's quite a person. I've never met her. She talks
She's very
about,
dynamic.
I believe that, and she plays guitar too. I wouldn't even attempt that.
Did not
Uh,
know that.
Corruption, disruption, and destruction. She talks about a cyber risk as having any one of those characteristics: corruption, disruption, or destruction. To which I added nuisance and theft of data,
hmm
or theft of IP. So to me, that's what a cyber risk is. It's
hmm
something that could affect that. And I've said this, no, hurricanes, which is not tsunamis or whatever, are not like that. Why? Because look at CrowdStrike, but we can move up from CrowdStrike. It can happen simultaneously around the
Yep.
world right now. Now, unless someone can control the weather, and no, I don't believe anyone who says anyone can control the weather, the tsunamis, the hurricanes, the whatever, they're not going to hit the whole planet all at once. In fact, it's COVID on steroids. I mean, it's done quite possibly, not quite possibly, it's done by intent. It's perpetrated by one problem with age, losing pronunciation.
You're fine.
Cyber attackers can do it whenever they want.
Right.
So let me go back to seeing this vision of what the cyber world is. I think we are, through those 5 technologies again, we are cyber forming the world. We're not terraforming it, we're cyber forming. The confluence of those 5 technologies,
hmm
and at least one of them has got to be the web connection. I think of it as a gradient of these 5 technologies. What is a cyber artifact? There's going to be increasingly more cyber artifacts. A cyber artifact, a fulsome cyber artifact, will have all 5, but at least be connected to the web. I think that we are cyber forming the world, that everything we see and touch and deal with is going to have at least one or more cyber artifacts involved, and it's going to be part of the cyber formed world. It's going to be immediate. It's going to be instantaneous. For us on the right side of the cloud, if you will, I thought about that song, looking at clouds from both sides now.
Mm,
I mean, my whole life has been how do insurance companies use technology to help their channels, to help clients,
right.
and to perpetrate commerce effectively and efficiently. But with cyber, you have to look at the underside of the cloud. I'm not saying that companies should stop helping their clients, but they have to realize what the negative aspects of that are. So we're cyberforming the world, and that includes hospitals, that includes maritime, that includes the space satellites, that includes everything. Our entire world is going to be cyberformed. So what might then, instead of talking about the risk landscape, what might the cyber risk landscape look like? I don't think it's a landscape. I don't think it's a surface. I don't think it's a terrain. I think it's an nth dimensional
Right.
topographical space.
I was thinking the same thing. It's like a what I was thinking as you were saying that is that, and this may be simplistic, but one of the differences, and maybe one way to understand it, is to say, with the traditional risk, the hurricane happens in a finite, in a specific place, and as
Right.
devastating as it is, and as expensive as it is to insure, it happens and it's over. In the cyber world, the cyber age that you're talking about, the hurricane happens everywhere, all at once to everyone. And that is an exponentially greater risk
And you
that
don't
we
know if it's
have.
over. You do not know if it's over because the
Right.
cyber predators can and probably do, and we know they do, keep the data. They keep the
Hmm.
intellectual property. They keep the information. And I love it when I don't love it, but I mean when a company gets hacked and they'll say, well, we're going to protect you. We're going to sign up to protect you for 1 year or
We're going to
two
give you,
years.
right.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So what happens in year three, in year four, in year N? Because the cyber predators are going to keep that data for ever until
Right.
they think they can make a dime out of it. All right, so let's go back to this nth dimensional space. Every time a digital artifact, which is a digital process or something we create digitally or is connected to the web, that nth dimensional topographical space changes and expands.
Sure.
Every time you add a physical artifact with digital content or telecommunications content, like an IoT, an Internet of Things device, every time one of those is added to the web, and by the way, there's 23 billion of them right now. That's B with a
Hmm.
B, billion with a B, and they keep on growing. Every time one of them is added to the web, that nth dimensional topographical space expands and
Hmm.
unfolds. Every time a living entity that has an IP, Internet Processor Sensor, an IP address sensor embedded to that living entity or embedded in it, like a farm animal.
Hmm.
There are farms that have cattle or cows or other
Right.
animals that have IP sensors attached to them. Every time by the way, there's a bee farm in Australia. They have IP sensors attached to the
Each
bees.
of the bees. Wow.
Yeah, the
That's
bees. Yeah. How would
pretty.
you like to attach one of those to one of those little
Um,
critters?
I'm.
Any rate, so every time one of those living entities is attached to the web, that topographical space and dimensional
Mhm.
expands and grows.
That's you and
Every
me. We're attaching to the web. We could be
Yeah,
through our
exactly.
devices.
That's
Hmm.
right. Um, think about your mobile device. You're
Hmm.
swallowing your mobile device. Apple is supposedly coming out with a ring. I forget who the 800-pound gorilla is in that space, but then you really always be connected to the web. There are non-human entities, which are tokens or addresses that help APIs get connected to each other in the systems. Every time one of them is connected to the web, that nth dimensional topographical space. All right. So now we have this vision of this nth dimensional topographical space expanding and unfolding through time as we add more artifacts, digital, physical, whatever, to them. All right. So someone says, well, okay, cyber risks are different than other risks. I might give you that, but all we need is the right data. All we need is the right data,
Right.
and we can model what the cyber losses are going to be.
That's the
Geez,
pushback. That's the
I
pushback, right?
wish, yeah, it's a pushback. And my pushback is, would you please tell me how you're going to reach into that nth dimensional topographical space that continues to unfold and expand through time? How are you going to find that spot or that region where the cyber risk is going to change into a cyber attack
Hmm.
and be perpetrated. There's that. I tell you, I didn't. All I'm having to drink is tea. It's going.
Easy for you to say.
It's yeah. It's going to hit that company one time, multiple times. It's going to affect customers multiple times. And yeah, you can model what has happened. God bless. Of course, you can model the past. How are you going to model the future? We're not talking about a hurricane zone. We're not talking about a wildfire zone.
Hmm.
We're not talking about, when automobiles first hit the road, and you probably do as a lawyer, that there were accidents of two cars hitting each other, and they were probably the only two cars in that
Right.
particular town
Right.
at the time.
You don't
So
think
we're
it's
not
going to
even.
happen, but it does happen.
That's right.
Right.
You think about how could two cars? There's only four cars in the town.
Right.
Anyway,
You
so
couldn't stay away from the only other car. Right.
how yeah, so you had job one.
The problem is there's only one street. There's only one road. So,
That's true. So how can you reach into the right part of that unfolding topographical cyber risk space and pick the right data that is associated with the type of attack that's going to come? And how do you know which company, functional departments, which of the ecosystems that will ripple to, and those firms of that ecosystem and those employees and suppliers of that ecosystem company, it's like Russian nesting dolls. And in a way, I think some people probably thought that he's crazy. And then CrowdStrike happened, and I noticed that on
mhm.
LinkedIn. Someone said, "Well, maybe that Rapkin guy is onto something."
Maybe
And
Rabkin's onto something.
and
Right.
yeah, it was a cyber incident. It was not a cyber attack. But think about if it was a cyber attack. Think about
Hmm.
the volume of people, the volume of financial whatever economic losses that would have been impacted if it was a cyber attack. And I think that there will be cyber. I think CrowdStrike set the bar. I think there are probably some cyber predators somewhere saying, "Oh, that was only a cyber incident, but I think we can do better." We
Well,
can.
I'm sure that's the case. All right, let me push back. And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to push back anyway.
No, that's fine.
Someone might say, all right, Barry, that all makes sense. You're explaining how the sheer volume and interconnectedness of all of these technologies and endpoints and artifacts or data create such an extraordinary worldwide web of interconnected points that we're just an hour, a day, a year, a decade away from a single catastrophic event that will utterly destroy what we built and prove, when it's too late, the uninsurability of this risk. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the small to mid-sized business with 50 endpoints and 500 employees and a data breach that affects a finite set of data. Surely that's insurable. And if that's insurable, do we at least draw a line between this overarching argument that ultimately we have a very lovely Potemkin village of cyber coverage here that's eventually it's going to fall in on itself. But on the other hand, you have these more discrete risks for which the industry is capable of foreseeing and pricing in a way that helps the industry, helps the customer. What say you to that?
A couple of things. First of all, no company, however small, is an island unto itself. Even if it only has 50 employees, even if it only has 5 employees, it's getting supplied by by some company. It has suppliers, and those suppliers have companies. I mean, those suppliers have employees, yada, yada, yada. I mean, we're all within this chain. I, I think we are becoming a brittle, interconnected, cyber-formed world. And is there a way to sell cyber insurance to that small business? Yes, Yes, there is. I mean, I'm going to go back to, I don't know if I mentioned it. I think I did. Underwriting to combined ratios of under 100%.
You did. You did.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, attached to that, I believe, is the need to comfortably estimate probable maximum loss. Property and casualty insurers should be, whatever line they're selling, but certainly in cyber, estimating their probable maximum loss. That sort of gets to that picking out that right point on the unfolding topographical space. Now, is there a way to do that? Yeah, there is. Limit the term, strengthen the terms, conditions, and restrictions, and limit the amount of coverage that you sell. I think that is one way to do it. If I am an insurance company selling cyber insurance, I'll just sell less than what the client needs, and I'll strengthen the terms, conditions, and restrictions. That's one way to do it.
Hmm.
Another way for an insurer to do it is to say, I sort of want to say that I participate in the cyber insurance market, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to sponsor an insurance-linked security cyber cat bond, and I'm going to get the capital markets involved. I'm going to get their capacity involved, so I don't have to pony up as much. And there may even be cyber captives, although I still haven't heard. I know that there are firms like Marsh who have a cyber captive division, but I still haven't heard of any cyber captives. They might have cyber captives. I don't know. I'm ignorant on that point. I don't know how many cyber captives there are. There is a small but growing amount of ILS cyber cat bonds. I know that, but I don't know about the captives. So I'm talking about alternative risk transfer mechanisms. For the primary insurer to say, all right, we're only going to insure a little bit, whatever that little bit is. I don't know if it's 5 million, I don't know if it's 10 million, but we're only going to insure a little bit. And then it'll be up to the broker to put together the insurance tower that the company, that their client, their corporate client needs. Now, back to the small business. I think it's still a limiting function. I think that insurers still have to have a good handle on that probable maximum loss, even for a small business. And I wonder if I was an insurer looking at small and mid-sized enterprises, primarily small, selling cyber insurance, if I wouldn't say I have to get a probable maximum loss that I'm comfortable with, that's going to equate to how much I'm willing to cover. That's going to also include strengthened terms, conditions, and restrictions. And that means to me that I'm going to have to charge X. Now,
you're going to have, right, premium changes. Sure. Increases.
On the other side of that, the broker looks at that, or the client looks at that and says, how much commission am I getting out of this? I'm going to look at the real world effect now. What am I getting? 10%, 12%? What am I getting from this if I'm a broker selling cyber insurance? Is it worth it to me to chase around the marketplace to find or to build that tower of insurance cyber cover that I need for my small business? I don't know the answer to that. I do know, having worked in the industry, that the small firms tend to be the redheaded stepchild. Is it worth it? Is it financially worth it to sell to them, to sell and service to them? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it is. Maybe it's that there are some brokers and there are some MGAs who are only going to concentrate on SME who will say, yeah, it is. And there's one other point I want to make, and I said it in the blog, which is I'm an insurance guy. I'm not a finance guy. And I've talked to a couple of reinsurance folks who said, from a finance standpoint, there is a way for insurance companies to get the returns that they want from participating in the cyber insurance market. Looking at it from a financial standpoint, from a financial return, like if I was an investment banker, from which I know nothing. I might as well be a neurosurgeon. I'm looking at probable maximum loss and combined ratios of under 100%. And I'm saying, hey, if CrowdStrike becomes more the norm, your combined ratios are going to be well over 100%. Now, you're telling me that if CrowdStrike becomes the norm, you can still make money out of this. from looking at cyber insurance as a financial instrument.
Let's see it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you're going to have to show me that every step of the way because I'm not a finance guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think you did, and I think that many who hear you talk about the uninsurability of cyber risks don't really appreciate what you are saying. You're not talking about, you're not making the simple point that, well, your business and mine can't obtain or will someday be, unable to obtain insurance. It's not merely that. What I think I hear you saying, and it makes some sense to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, you know, we can talk about expanding the cyber insurance market for small to mid-sized businesses, for large businesses. We can do that. But based on these really interconnected technologies that we're talking about in the cyber age, there will come a time when there is a series, one or more catastrophic risks for which the market has not and may be incapable of planning for because we don't have the data. And then, my friends, your cyber coverage may disappear overnight because these companies that have not adequately evaluated and priced the risk are going to go away. I don't mean to sound radical about that.
No. But that is what I'm saying. And I'd like to point out that I said it before the CEO of Zurich.
The CEO of Zurich.
Yeah, back in December 26th of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
This is a quote, what will become uninsurable is going to be cyber. What if someone takes control of vital parts of our infrastructure? The consequences of that. And I'll just go on a little bit. First off, there must be a perception that this is not just data. This is about civilization. These people, cyber predators, can severely disrupt our lives. And yes, I'm talking about those 5 technologies and their applications, but it's not the technology per se. And by the way, I love technology. I love research.
I know you do.
Excuse me. I love researching current and emerging technologies and their applications, but it's what are they doing to achieve business objectives? Mm-hmm. What are they doing to achieve customer objectives? So someday, those customer objectives are going to be so severely disrupted that they will become uninsurable. Right. It's not the technologies and their applications per se. Yes, those technologies and applications are forming the cyber age. Yes, they're forming cyber artifacts. Yes, they're cyber forming our world. It's that we as people and as companies are becoming ourselves like a digital twin, if you will, of the technologies that we're and their applications that we're using to achieve our ends. And Kevin, you can have all the cyber regulations you want. You can have government cyber regulations. You can have industry cyber regulations. I think to me, for cyber predators, they're just like, well, you're changing the rules of the game, but you're not stopping us. Right. We don't really care that those companies are adhering to those cyber regulations. We're going to attack them because there's really no way to stop us.
No, and that's proved to be true. So, all right. So in the time we have left, question for you.
Yes, sir.
Here's where the rubber meets the road. You have a business. Let's pick one. I'll describe one. Tell me if I pick the right one. I mean to just pick an everyday business, small to medium size. Let's pick healthcare. I think that might be a good one. Let's pick a healthcare provider, and the provider comes to you and says, "Well, Mr. Rabkin, I've read your book. I've seen this podcast. I've seen your blogs and your message about."
You like that character in Little Abner with the dark cloud over your head,
right?
or Peanuts.
That's right. So I get it, but what do I do? How do I approach this as a mere market participant? I'm not selling the insurance. I'm not designing the insurance. I'm not collecting premiums. I'm not paid to think about how all of this shakes out a month or a year or a decade from now. I'm just looking to manage my risk for as long as I'm able to manage it with as many risk management tools at my disposal. How do I think about this? How would you talk to a provider or business like that to help them understand whether and the extent to which to weave this current risk management tool into their operations?
I think first thing I would say is that you're never going to be cyber secure, but you have to strive to be cyber resilient. And what I mean by that is you're going to be hit, but you have to create your policies and procedures and your use of cyber security, cyber resilience solutions, and if you could afford them, advisory services in such a way that you can bounce back as quickly as possible. That's,
Mhm.
I know that it sounds like a cop out, but it seems to me that I don't see any way around this. We're, we have moved from an analog world to a world that is a mixture of analog and digital. And now we're moving to a world of analog or physical artifacts, digital artifacts, and cyber artifacts. But to Mr. Small Businessman, I would say you have to adhere to all your cyber guidelines. You, as much as I personally feel they're not going to do you much good, you still have to show your customers, and if you have shareholders, your shareholders, and of course your regulators, that you are adhering to the guidelines of the cyber regulations of your industry. And you can scale that up because if you're a large corporation, you have to adhere to the cyber guidelines in the EU and Australia and
Right.
wherever you're
Sure.
doing business. So you have to adhere to all the cyber guidelines. You have to take reasonable steps. I mean, you might be waiting for me to say MFA, multi-factor authentication,
Well,
but I'm sure you've seen people on the internet say we have more ways around MFA
yeah.
than we can
Well, there's
talk about.
MFA. There are different types of MFA, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I want
No, that's
you to go
fine.
back to your thought, but I think what I have started preaching to people, and by the way, we're on exactly the same page, because what I like to say to folks is use cyber insurance as an invaluable risk management tool, but think of it as the icing on the cake. What you really need to do is focus on your own safeguards, physical,
That's right.
electronic, legal safeguards, and what I've reached a point, and I'm curious your thoughts, but I want you to go back to what you were saying too. I've reached a point where I say, we, maybe the me's of the world, we have maybe sold our clients a bill of goods. It's not about saying, well, I'm going to get MFA and smart passwords and endpoint detection and response, and I'm all set. This has to be part of a risk assessment.
Right.
What are the unique risks you face?
Exactly.
How are you going to mitigate those risks? And is your mitigation tied back to either an industry standard such as NIST or to a regulatory standard that you have to
That's right.
comply with? It's a lot easier said than done. And I think today there are businesses out there that think, oh, what's this MFA thing? If I just do that and have smart passwords, I'm
The
all
magic
set.
bullet. I'm looking for a magic
Yes,
bullet.
right.
Where is it?
Yeah, and that's not the case. But anyway, I interrupted you. Back to your.
No. So I think those two things at the very least, and understanding that you're gonna get hit. It just there's just no way around it. When I started my own business, 2014, I forget what the time frame was. It's just me and the fellow who was taking care of my website. I got hit within 2 or 3 months. And I mean, I was doing, industry analysts, and I called him up and I went, "What?" He said, "Barry, it's a numbers game." I go back to my, Jen Easterly talked about, sorry, corruption, disruption, destruction, and I added nuisance to that. It was nuisance. I just got hit. He said, "Don't worry. I had backed everything up. Your web is backed up, and I can restore everything, and that's fine." And that's why I put nuisance in there. You're just going to get hit. It's a game. It's a numbers game, and at that level, it's just a recognition that we are moving into a world that is interconnected, and because of that, we have become playthings to cyber predators. It's that predator-prey dynamic. That's part of the cyber-formed world is a complex adaptive system. We are all on the savannah. We are all food for cyber predators' lunch.
Hmm.
And I guess what you could do is make yourself not as tasty
Right,
as
right.
your competitors are, but eventually they're probably going to come around to you and munch on your lunch too, or make you
Yeah.
lunch.
No, that's right. That's right. Um, all right, we've got limited time left, but I want to ask you, and I want to talk about, maybe you'll come back and we can talk about your Stone Tablets to Satellites book. Before I have two other questions though. Okay, give us a blurb about your new book, because I know you're working on it. I don't know where it is in the publication process, but without spilling the beans, can you tell us a little bit about your new book?
I'll give you the working title, which is Ramifications of Insurance Commerce in the Cyber Age.
Okay.
And I'm looking at insurance companies in two ways, sort of like shrimp two ways. The first way is providers of cyber insurance coverage,
Hmm.
because that's what they're doing. And I think that'll go on for a while. I hope it doesn't go along for too long, because we've already discussed why I don't want it to go along for too long.
Right, right.
But the second way of looking at them is as targets themselves.
Hmm.
They all they are also cyber targets. So I want to discuss insurance commerce, looking at insurance companies as what are they doing, what are they providing, how is that
Hmm.
coverage changing, by the way, and the second part is what are they doing to protect themselves
Hmm.
as cyber, because they're under cyber attack as well. And I want to look at, like I did in the first book, what what is the insurance commerce process from the client through the broker to the carrier, a little bit in the reinsurer. What is that insurance commerce process? And what are the technologies and the applications that are being used in that process? But now let's look at the underside of the cloud. You know,
Hmm.
where are the
Hmm.
points of attack
Hmm.
in that process? Now, in that commerce process. And in that book, I looked at insurance companies themselves. I looked at clients. I looked at the commerce process. I looked at claimants, and I looked at the product development process. And that was the guts. But before I got to the guts, I discussed insurance strategies and business models,
Hmm.
and discussed why. I know at that time I wrote the book, which was during the pandemic. I know that a lot of people were enthralled with Amazon and Netflix, but I discussed why insurance companies should not use Amazon as a business model, and why
Right.
they should not use Netflix as a business model. To tell you why the butler did it in the kitchen with the candlestick is because insurance is not a commodity.
Hmm.
Amazon is selling a commodity. Netflix is selling a commodity. We are not selling a commodity. Bill Wilson and I could be a choir in the top tier of the church. We are not selling a commodity, regardless of the line of business.
Hmm.
And so I discussed the Amazon business model in depth, and the Netflix business model, and then the insurance business model. Then after all that, then I got into, well, how is emerging and current and emerging technology used in the insurance commerce processes? And I try to make the point, and I'm going to do it again here, that commerce is really nothing more than a communication and collaboration set of processes. That's what commerce is. So let's look at communication processes, and let's look at collaboration processes, and what are the technologies involved, and how is that helping those
Right.
two
Hmm.
functional areas, if you will, or functional capabilities meet their objectives. But in this book, it's what's the underside of the cloud? What is it
Yeah.
that they have to worry about?
Hmm.
Now you ask where I am. We
I
have reached we've reached our eighth framework.
hmm.
Me, which my editor has agreed to. I wrote the preface, and I shouldn't say write, I should say drafted, because when you work with an editor, it's sort of like an umpire. It ain't nothing until I call it. Uh,
Right.
it might look like a ball, but it ain't nothing until I call it.
This is what people are going to read. Not yet.
That's exactly right. People say they're looking forward to it, and I'm saying, yeah, me too. Anyway, I've drafted the preface, I've
Right.
drafted the introduction, I've drafted the lead in to the first section, which is a discussion of the tectonic Transformation into the Cyber Age. And it's got 8
Mhm.
chapters, and there are
Mhm.
7 other sections. So where am I? We're targeting the end of 2025 for me to get a final draft to my editor, Wells Media, same
Mhm.
publisher as the first book, and that's where we are. And then he'll do his magic. They turned it into a Kindle. I had no idea that. I use Scrivener, by the way,
You
as
don't
my
need to.
tool.
Right.
You're right. The publisher worries about that. I didn't know what
Mhm.
they had to do to turn it into, Amazon. What Amazon needs: Kindle, paperback, hard copy, and
Mhm.
Audible. I got 40 copies. The first book, I was told I could have whatever I wanted. I got mostly paperbacks. I got a couple of hard copies. I did not want the Audible. They said, "Why don't you want the Audible?" I went, "I wrote the damn thing. What am I gonna hear? Someone else shouting my words back to me? No, that's all
That's
right. Thank
true.
you."
That's true. Although I would read it for you if you didn't want to read it. Well, it sounds like I'm excited for you. It sounds like, and I just started from stone tablets to satellites, but from what you've
Oh, thank you.
described, it sounds like your next book coming out at the end of 2025 is the logical extension to
2026 is
that
by
one.
the time they get it to the market. I mean, by the time
Yes.
Amazon publishes it.
So, all right. So
Oh,
we've
I
got
got
to
to
leave
tell
it
you that
there.
my editor said, "I'm
Oh,
sorry that we're ending in 2025, or I'm sorry, we're not ending before 2025." And I said, "Everything is changing in cyber. I mean, my God, we could publish this in 2027 and it would still be relevant."
yes. No, that's right. I was listening to a couple of my good friends Jody and Justin Daniels on their She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast.
Oh,
They
I
had
love
a
that.
It's a terrific podcast. I recommend it to everyone. And they had a guest who had written a textbook on cybersecurity, and the point he made was, "Well, I wrote this book 18 months ago, and they're coming back to me to update it, to write a new edition because so much has changed in that short period of time." So before we go, I want to let you go, but you are a man of letters and author of books, but I'm going to turn the tables on you and say, if you're in the proverbial elevator with the CEO of a modern business, and you have an opportunity to tell her in the time it takes for that elevator to go from top to bottom what she should know about cyber insurance today and what it means for her organization, what do you say?
I would tell her she needs to know who are the key providers and what the key coverages are, and how those coverages are changing, and how the terms of the various contracts are changing of cyber insurance.
Yeah,
And then
and
how that aligns with her budget and resources, and not only her existing business, but her strategies and plans for the future.
yeah, and I suppose you might add, or if I were there, I might add. And by the way, this is a risk management tool that you should definitely explore, but you should not see it as a panacea. You should see it
Exactly.
as one component of an overall risk management plan that starts and may someday end with your physical, electronic, and legal safeguards.
That's
Because
right.
if you don't have those in place, you may not be long for the cyber market, even if it exists.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Barry, thank you so much. There's so much more that I want to talk to you about, but maybe we'll save it for another episode.
Maybe I would have written more of the book by then.
Well, I will look forward to working my way through from stone tablets to satellites recommended to our audience. Thank you for joining us, Barry. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this episode of CyberSip. We're back soon with another episode. The CyberSip podcast is available on barclaydamon.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Like, follow, share, and continue to listen.